I was walking through the halls of a Minnesota rink when along came a Wild fan who started talking smack to me. He said, I bet you never liked the Blues until they won a cup. And so I calmly turned to him and said, hey man, listen up. I admit it's pretty great to win Lord Stanley's prize, but listen, I've been waiting for this moment my whole life. Yes, sir, I'm a Blues fan. Yes, sir, I'm a Blues fan. Heartbreak's all I knew, man. That team from old St. Lou, man. Got a cup in here, 52, man. Give me a Let's Go Blues. I know Federico, Turnbull, Gilmore, Brown, Channel, Bothwell, Babbage, Maher, Mullen, Millen, Sutter, Pedersen, Pavsey, Curry, Zuckley, Uthert, Hunter, Schofield, Reaves, Ramage, Kia, Dunlop, Wickenheiser, Crombie, Benning, Raglan, Ewan, Nicoletti, Ramage, Romney, Kozlowski, Evans, Cavallini. Yes, sir, I'm a Blues fan. Yes, sir, I'm a Blues fan. Heartbreak's all I knew, man. That team from old St. Lou, man. Got a cup in here, 52, man. Give me a Let's Go Blues.
And now, the starting lineup for your Bluenotes podcast. Tom Franklin and the man called Wags.
Hello and welcome to Bluenotes, located on the best city on the Mississippi, the best in the Midwest. We've got that Stanley Cup power, too sweet to be sour. And if you're still clueless, we are talking about St. Louis. This is your home for St. Louis Blues coverage on the Hockey Podcast Network. My name is Tom Franklin. My co-host is Wags. He is here. He is present after some computer issues. But you know what? You know, just like a good hockey player, you pick yourself up off the ice and you forge ahead.
That you do. You gotta be able to adjust on the fly, and that's kind of what I had to do. We went from computer to phone, and it's still going to work. We're going to make it happen.
We are going to make this happen no matter, even though this is take number 45 of this podcast, we are going to make this work, okay? No, not really. I was kidding. Alrighty. Reminder that if you're listening to this on Thursday or watching it, there will not be a review of the amazing things that happened Wednesday night between the Blues and Avs because, well, we are human and we can't stay up that late and then do a podcast. I'm so sorry. Someday maybe, but not this day. So we might bring back Griffin Youngs for a chat on Sunday to discuss the two opening games, both Wednesday night and Friday night. Plus, hopefully you get the Stick Hungry guys on to preview the Blues Sharks miniseries that starts next week. So we got that in the hopper for you. Lots of Blues news this week. We'll cover that after we get into another Bluenotes face-off this week. And Wags, these two are hungry to get at the Blues this year. We're talking about Andrew Choi and Dave Aikman of Weekly Nightly.
Oh, yeah. I mean, we were going back and forth on Twitter the other night, just back and forth about the Petro thing and you know, being a Vegas fan in general. So I'm ready for them to come out and lay it down on us and let's get this rivalry going.
But you know what I've been hungry for, Wags? We've been without a fresh lyrical genius composition from our own Luke Widbin, the man behind our intros. He has decided for this season that he is going to move on from the world of, pop singing, if you will. And he's going to dabble with country rap. Ooh. He's going to dabble with country rap. And he's got a little something to say about the Colorado Avalanche. Let's go ahead and hear the latest from our man, the man that starts every single episode of Bluenotes. He is number one in each podcast and number one in your heart, Luke Widbin.
Gather round and sit on down, I'll tell you a story, son. It won't take long, I don't think I'm wrong, it's how the West was won. The Ducks and Kings and Sharks won't even look 'em in the eye. The Blues, the Wild, the Yotes and Knights will at least give it a try. You've all been warned when they come storming in, just say a prayer. And tighten up your defense, 'cause they ain't stopping till they're here. They cascade down the mountain like a mighty rush of snow. And if you don't know who I'm talking about, well, it's Colorado. the Avs are stacked, it's just a fact, and let me tell you why. For a lot of years, they were pretty bad, so they drafted pretty high. The forward group is big and fast, led by McKinnon and Landeskog, Nikushkin and Burakovsky alongside Rantanen and Saad. And for some reason, Donskoy seems to play the Blues the best. And do not get me started on that Nazem Kadri pest. With all respect to Edmonton, the best player in the league, well, he's fleet of foot and dangles good, and he wears burgundy. Yeah, I said it. McKinnon's better than McDavid. You think all they got are forwards? Boy, you're in for a surprise. Cause the boys in back are just as fast and move the puck up eyes. They got this kid named Cale Makar and he can really soar. How he shoots the puck and jumps on up, you'd swear he's Bobby Orr. They pair him up with Devon Tays, on paper a perfect pair. And after Makar, well, Sam Girard, he plays the same out there. Ryan Graves and Ian Cole round out the final crew. And he can't drive a golf cart, but Eric Johnson, he's there too. After all that chasing, you can somehow get the puck. Well, grab your posse and saddle up, cause you might be in luck. Cause while the Avs, they send their best to take over your town, the guys they left to guard the jail, they ain't the best around. Now before you think these guys are weak, I'd caution you, my friend. The numbers for Grubauer could rebound to where they've been. When he needs a rest, there's a check-in net, and he goes by Francois. And while they may not be the greatest, well, they're still a worthy foe. Like I said before, the Avalanche, they're pretty great. But anything can happen when there's only half the games. So saddle up and grab your gun, make sure you get your rest. This season should be lots of fun playing hockey in the West.
So there you have it. The Devil went down to Colorado.
That is just impressive once again. I'm amazed every time he produces something new, and I shouldn't be because it's always so damn good and perfect. I cannot wait for the rest of the season previews or recaps or whatever he's going to end up doing for us this year. Luke is just amazing.
Yeah, and the thing about that particular song is like once you get done toe tapping to the beat behind it, and the fact and how he keeps up with the rhythm, it's actually a decent scouting report of the Colorado Avalanche. It's actually based in fact, everything that he says, and I even showed this to Griffin Young's Tell It As It Is podcast host, and he was impressed by it, and we are going to make Luke Widbin famous. Damn it,
let's do it.
Let's do it. We are doing our damnedest. We are absolutely doing our damnedest. Well, the Devil may have gone down to Colorado, but we're going down to Vegas for a preview of the Golden Knights with our THPN brethren, weekly, nightly. It is Andrew Choi and Dave Aikman. Let's get to them right now. It's another Bluenotes face-off of the week.
It's the Bluenotes face-off of the week.
And that beautiful NHL 94 music means it is time for our Bluenotes face-off of the week. We have another one this week. This time it is our soon-to-be rivals in the West Division. And I say that as a prediction just because of some of the stuff that's been flung around already between the Vegas Golden Knights and the St. Louis Blues. We have Dave Aikman and Andrew Choi from the weekly nightly podcast on the Hockey Podcast Network. I would tell you welcome to the show, but I guess you should be the ones welcoming us out west.
Yeah, welcome to what's usually the crappiest division in the NHL. So makes us look really good. But
yeah,
now you and Colorado are joining, so we're in trouble.
Yeah,
and your former division is now the crappiest one now that you guys left it.
It pretty much is. The NHL pretty much just decided, you know what, Tampa, just go ahead and just cakewalk your way into the playoffs. It's, we owe you for something. I don't know what, but something.
Yeah, let Kucherov just take the whole year off. You guys, you'll be fine.
Dallas, you don't have both of your starting netminders? That's okay. We'll make it easy on you. We'll give you Chicago and Detroit.
Yep.
Great. So anyway, yeah, we're well aware that the West Division, it's going to be a buzzsaw in some ways, but then in others it might be a cakewalk. We'll get to that here in just a little bit. So before we get going here, let's get the elephant out of the room right away. Let's get something straight here. We let you have Petro. Okay, we allowed you to sign Petro this offseason. Petro did not want to come back to St. Louis. I firmly believe that. And Doug Armstrong didn't want to play around with his demands. We have Torrey Krug and Mike Hoffman now. Neither one of them are holding the team hostage with a no movement clause. So, guys, we good on Petro.
It's fine. I mean, yeah, we're well prepared to know that our contracts are going to be absolutely horrendous in like 4 or 5 years. And then like all of a sudden then old Petro and old Stone are going to be slowing down and we're going to be in trouble. But hey, if we win a cup, 2 cups, 3 cups before that, then I don't care. I'm fine with talking for 3 or 4 years.
I guess
exactly.
I guess Wags is fitting that they're becoming our rivals because they're sounding like the Blackhawks here in about the next couple of years.
Yeah, they certainly are.
Yeah, so like in all serious though, just how excited are Vegas fans about Petro?
We come from a newer fan base, and I'll let Dave take part of this. But just knowing that we come from a newer fan base where a lot of our fans are brand new to hockey still within the last 3 to 4 years, and a lot of the fans didn't really jump into getting into hockey until the first year playoffs when Vegas started doing the miracles and stuff. So a lot of people are still learning. I think they're still learning that Petro should be a household name here, and that he is absolutely awesome. And so yeah, I think. What do you think, Dave?
Well, yeah, I kind of agree with that because most people are just excited to have the season back and have the team back. Know that there's a fair number of fans that were upset that we had to move people out to sign Petro, like Schmidt and Stasny. A lot of people fell in love with the original Misfits from that first year, and they didn't want to see anybody go. But once they see him play, as you guys can attest to, they'll fall in love with him. So we're definitely, the 4 of us in our podcast, Carlo and Eric couldn't make it because of other obligations, but we've been hyping that up for a while. I mean, we mention it at least in every podcast. So, but
or to Tom,
people will warm up. We'll warm up to it.
Yeah, well, I mean, we were going to ask you this, but it sounds like you kind of already did. But is there any ill will over shaking up team chemistry to fit him in? I mean, obviously, Petro's a great player, and people are going to see that. But is there any ill will about the team chemistry being mixed up?
There's always ill will here about that.
Maybe from some select fans, yes. There, are some that just want to get going and cheer the team on, and it's like the rest of us. Every market they miss being in the arena and everything, but things are the way they are. But I think what I noticed, just personally anyway, more people are giving us crap about our team chemistry than it is coming within. There may be a select fans in the market here that do that, but I think more people are kind of ranking us down because of team chemistry. I mean, it's possible. I expect kind of a slower start, and then we'll build up towards the end of the season, and then we'll get going.
I mean, just watching everything that I've seen so far in like the training camps and stuff, though. These guys are used to that stuff, and that's what us as fans always forget is that for somebody like Petro, who is the face of a franchise and it's his first move, it was the same thing essentially for Mark Stone. And look how well he's fit in so far in the past couple of years. So these guys are professionals. They know what it's like to move around because they came from an AHL team or a college team or whatever before. So it's just part of the game. And I think that the chemistry part though is the interesting thing. Is like, yeah, you can play with this team, but is it going to work well on the ice in an NHL game in every single part? And I guess we'll find out this week, right? And that's what we're all really curious about. But at the same time, just the thought of having Shea Theodore playing 20 to 25 minutes on a different line or a different pairing than Petro playing another 20 to 25 minutes, that's like almost the entire game where there's an elite defender on our ice. So that's really exciting for us.
Well, and that leads me into my next question here for you guys. And first of all, I want to point out that the professional roster and the veteran roster that really kind of highlighted for me this week, because I wrote up the Vegas season preview for Last Word on Hockey. It's available Wednesday, so Bluenotes Nation, you can read it now. But I had a hard time getting a read on who Petro will be partnering up with this season on defense. I guessed McNabb after reading, what you kind of mentioned, Andrew, about Shea being kept separate to anchor his own partnership. So who is going to be Petro's partner, or is that still something that's up in the air?
It'll be McNabb to start because he's basically a plug and play for a Schmidt on, a Schmidt plus. So yeah, it's going to start off like that, but I'm not sure that it'll stay that way. If they're having issues with chemistry, they'll switch up those pairings, immediately. And at the same time, though, like I definitely can see, and I've been reading some of the articles out there. Everybody's predicting that on certain power plays, they'll bring both Theodore and Petro into as the two defenders, and that's going to be so scary.
Yeah, I expect to be McNabb at first too. I don't expect like a super pairing like Pronger McInnes was years back for you guys. So maybe on the power play, but they'll split up McNabb, see how it works, and things are always fluid. Never. I don't think any team has ever had a full season of keeping the same lines and the same pairings throughout the whole season anyway.
No, and Craig Berube's famous for doing that in the middle of games. So, yeah, that's never going to happen. Now, Vegas has never had a captain. Is Petro going to be it?
No. If anybody, like I cannot see them. That would be the straw that broke the camel's back that would alienate them. if you bring in the brand new guy that just cost an arm and a leg, and then you give him the C, we've all been thinking Mark Stone, because even though Mark Stone is not a year one guy, he is the most outspoken. He's the most expressive on the ice. Everybody always loves it. Even it doesn't matter what team you're a fan of. Like I don't see that many people saying that they absolutely hate Mark Stone, because you watch him play and it's just a treat every single time. So he's the guy that we're all thinking would make the most sense. I honestly don't know that it would be anybody else. What do you think, Dave?
Yeah, I believe it's going to be Mark Stone. And it was announced today, and I shared it amongst the four of us on our podcast. I'm not sure if you guys saw it or not, but that there was no new announcement. There's no new news on a captain. But my guess is they won't show anything until they hit the ice.
That's fair. And even in O'Reilly's case, he had to kind of earn his way to getting the captainship now, but that's taken 2-3 seasons of hard work in St. Louis and really earning it. I point to Gretzky here while Andrew was talking, because in the mid 90s, Brett Hull was the captain until Mike Keenan showed up. And then Keenan named Shane Corson the captain, the new guy. He's just signed in free agency, said, "Hey, you're the captain." And then the Blues trade for Wayne Gretzky and make him the captain right away. And we all saw how that worked out, Mr. Detroit Dave Aikman.
Why do we have him on the show?
I don't know. It's a glitch. Some papers got lost in translation. He's here. Fine. That's fine.
Well, I'm not any better. My other team is the.
I remember when Hull got stripped of that, and I was just like, "What are you doing?"
We spent November trying to figure out Mike Keenan's psyche, Wags, and we didn't get very far.
I think we went crazy ourselves trying to figure out what Mike Keenan was all about.
Yeah, the only thing that makes me pissed off more than a Steve Yzerman slap shot is Mike Keenan, just himself, just him as a human being. He's trash. All right, enough about Keenan, enough about Petro. He's yours. I consider him the payment for Vegas making David Perron better for his return to St. Louis. So thank you guys for David Perron and making him elite. But now let's look at the West himself. So you go from having the Canucks and the Alberta Bros in your division to the Blues, Avalanche, and the Minnesota Wild. Do you feel this swap makes this division tougher overall, or are you like us and are just completely unbothered by Minnesota?
Minnesota kicks our ass every time.
They're your Arizona.
Yeah, they are our Arizona, where they're not good, but they kick our ass. We just every time they're a very brute group of players where they will just beat you down, and Vegas is very good at that too, and so is St. Louis, but they take the cake when it comes to just kicking the asses of everybody. So like that's exactly what they do, is they just wear everybody down, and by the end of the third, they're scoring something and getting up on us.
Yeah, it's definitely they are a matchup problem with their system, and you just get frustrated by keeping Vegas to the outside instead of letting us go through the middle and through the slot and getting easy shots or whatnot. Colorado, obviously, as you guys know, brings all kinds of talent.
Yeah,
maybe not so much goaltending, but talent.
Broken goaltending.
Yeah.
By the way, Wags, don't tell them that we lobbied to bring Minnesota with us just so they can make Vegas's life hell. Okay, could you keep that on the down low?
I'll keep that secret. What
are you talking about? Like, I would rather face you guys than the Stars.
What?
like we were happy that the Stars all of a sudden went to the East. Like, even though physically you are farther east than Dallas, like they're like, okay, well, I guess St. Louis is going west.
I guess I still don't understand that, and the Stars play us tough as well, so I'm not going to argue with your claim that you'd rather face us than the Stars, because the Stars will grind you to death.
Hopefully we don't ruin your day in overtime multiple times this season again.
What's the word out there why they put St. Louis in the West compared to Dallas? What's the word out there?
There was some early speculation that Fox Sports Midwest, or I guess it's going to be Bally Sports Midwest soon, wanted to avoid conflicts with the St. Louis Cardinals. And so when the talk was about, okay, between Minnesota, St. Louis, and Dallas, who goes west, there was talk that, the TV station was lobbying for the Blues to go out west. Turns out that's unfounded. That was completely unfounded. We had the pregame host for the Blues on recently, and he confirmed that Fox Sports never asked for that. As far as why they're moving out west, I honestly, we never really got a solid answer on that, did we, Wags?
No, we didn't, because if you look at baseball, I mean, the Texas Rangers play in the AL West, so how is it that Dallas can't play out in the West? So yeah, never really got any clear word on why that's the case.
I think it may have been just simply so the Minnesota wasn't so lonely, when going out west, because they're a long ways away geographically. So I think they wanted a connecting team that's with them. But then why don't you? And I guess maybe why don't you move Dallas and St. Louis west? But maybe they were thinking of competitive balance, because that would make the West the division of death.
I was going to say that was my speculation, is just trying to keep the divisions balanced. But then again, Tampa and the Central.
Yeah,
Tampa and who else?
Tampa and everyone. Although I did pick Columbus to win the Central as a surprise pick, because no one ever gives Columbus any credit, and they shock everyone every year. So
I had them in the playoffs, and my prediction is as well too. I think I had them third, maybe, or maybe fourth. I think I had them fourth because they have another Tampa Columbus first round matchup.
Yep.
Nice.
I'm just gonna be happy when Pittsburgh doesn't make the playoffs. It's gonna be fun to see those fans whine about that. I don't like Pittsburgh. I don't like Pittsburgh.
I don't think anybody outside of Pittsburgh likes Pittsburgh. So now Colorado seems to be the favorite among THPN hosts for winning the West. Do you consider them the top threat? And how has Vegas fared against Colorado over the years?
Last year, bad last year, like really bad. Except for that, whatever you call it, the round robin games that didn't count. Like we won that, but like all season, the score was like, what was that one game? It was like 7-2 Avs, or something crazy.
Yeah, it was something ridiculous. They got us back for the first year when we beat them 7-0.
Yeah, so they don't like us.
I think in all those games that from last season, Robin Leonard did not face Colorado as a member of Vegas,
except for the one during. No, even in the round robin, didn't he also? Wasn't Fleury in for that one?
I can't recall on that one. I just remember in the regular season it was all Fleury.
Yeah, and Fleury does so ever since they acquired Pierre-Edouard Bellemare from us, or when he went UFA, it's like he gave them Fleury's cheat codes and is like, Fleury's going to do X, Y, and Z, and they just know exactly how to score on him, especially Bellemare. Like, he scored on Fleury. I want to say he had 10 goals last season, and 4 or 5 of them were on Fleury through just the Vegas games.
Crazy. And by the way, I want to ask you guys about that. So it looks like After the whole sword through the back thing, that his agent tweeted, which is still an all-time epic tweet. I wish it was still there, but he deleted it. It looks like Vegas might have one of the more combustible goaltending combos with Leonard and Fleury, and trying to make them both happy. It seems like we will have from what I'm reading, a 1A, 1B kind of a timeshare between the two. But how do you see that partnership playing out this year and beyond?
Well, DeBoer came out and said it was going to be a 50-50 split this season. That's what he came out and said. Whether that comes out and stays that way, obviously, as we all know, it just how we're going throughout the year, places in the standings and momentum and everything. I would like to say around 50-50 and just ride the hottest goaltender. We're going into the playoffs. I don't care who it is. Just want to have a hot goaltender in the playoffs.
Yeah, and we have rumblings of in our own podcast where Eric really wants them to move Fleury so that we could get somebody else, specifically Dougie Hamilton for some reason.
But who's going to do? I was going to say, who's going to take Fleury and his contract and his declining production in the COVID cap? I mean, that's going to be a hard sell.
Yeah, exactly.
It's probably not going to happen, and especially with a year left on term after this season, probably not going to happen. I could see him maybe getting moved at the end, or at the trade deadline, 2021-22 season, like where somebody's like, "Hey, maybe we're going to make the playoffs. Let's get a better goaltender," and so, or a backup, or a really elite backup, or something. But yeah, I'm not 100% sure what's going to end up happening, but we can't keep spending $12 million a year on goalies.
Yeah, and even if we move him next offseason, we're going to end up retaining salary.
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, you have to have two goaltenders in this league, but when you're paying that much to two goaltenders, that's the biggest issue right there.
It's kind of like Dallas a few years. Remember when they had Niemi and Lettinen, and they both were raging dumpster fires?
That's the problem, though. They were terrible and making a lot of money. Fleury and Leonard are not terrible.
They're great, actually.
No,
I mean, Leonard's great. Fleury's still fine.
Yeah, I mean, he's still elite for his age now. Like if you put him up against a goalie of his age, he's probably gonna win.
Yeah. The mistake was that they signed him to that contract right after his first season here, and he riding his hot hand, and they took him right to the playoffs. And that was a career year for him. His numbers that season were beyond anything of his averages.
Yeah, better than Pittsburgh ever.
Yeah. You can't base it off of one season, essentially. All right, let's talk a little bit. I wasn't going to go there. But I was thinking it. Ryan Reaves is always a threat to drop the mitts, especially with Evander Kane and all that fun stuff. Or at least he can hurt opponents' feelings with his chirping. Has he hit legend status in Vegas yet? Because we still love him here in St. Louis, and it's been a long time since he's been here.
He's an absolute legend. He is the face. He's one of the faces of the franchise out here. I mean, like, people absolutely love him. I would say, like, if you ask the random, like, not super into the game Golden Knights fan who their player was, it's either going to be Fleury or Reaves. And Reaves, especially since he did all the social commentary during, all of the protests over the summer, like that just cemented him as just a living legend here in Vegas. And, he's got his own beer line that he's working with a local brewery to produce. I know he did something similar when he was in St. Louis. His beer is delicious. It took off here really quickly. I think he's figured out that business aspect that he needs to, and really is good at marketing himself for what he is.
And we know Fleury is the number one jersey seller here. Reaves has probably got to be number 2.
Yeah.
Wow.
I remember when I got a Reaves Vegas jersey, and everyone thought I was insane because I got it like right after he was traded to Vegas, and he was considered like an afterthought because it didn't work out for him in Pittsburgh. So here I am getting a Reaves jersey, and everyone was like, "Well, why are you doing that? He's not going to stay in Vegas."
Nope.
Well, lo and behold,
he's here till he retires. I think at this point. I mean, I'm not going to fully say that I guarantee he retires after the end of this contract, but there's probably a pretty big chance he's going to be 35. He might play for another year or two after that, but yeah, I could really see him. He loves it here. I think he'll continue to do businesses here and continue his beer line and stuff like that. He definitely has brought like that great attitude that you've seen for all those years in St. Louis to Vegas with him. starting stuff with Evander Kane. I'm very interested to see how things go with 8 games against the Sharks this season. So it's going to be fun. And I know that he pesters the crap out of the Blues now that he knows everybody well enough to know how to ruin them. So you'll see him fly around and just say mean things all the time.
Oh yeah, he lives rent free in some Blues players' heads. I do not doubt that at all whatsoever. By the way, that Reaves beer, Wags, it was Center Ice Brewery that had it, and I think they still sold it up until recently, right?
I believe they did. Yeah, I think they kept it around the recipe at least.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we still love Revo here. All right, so we know about the goalies. We talked a little about the goalies. We talked about Petro a lot, but just for those that don't follow Vegas very closely, what do you feel is Vegas's biggest strength heading into this season?
Depth.
Except for
depth. Now, whether that goal scoring drought that we had in the playoffs continues is another story, but I still think we have good depth here because, especially now on defensive, we had part of it is a cap crunch though too. We had to send Holden down, and he did pass for waivers because his contract's higher up.
I was surprised he was waived, by the way, because I thought he might have been a candidate for a top 4 spot if Martinez got traded.
Well, I'll have to disagree on that one a little bit because he played that bottom pairing role perfectly. And when he did get moved up throughout the season, that's when he was pressured more by those higher lines. So
really bad.
Especially him and White Cloud together, they were a good pairing. And I got friends of mine around here that I sat with in my section. I have season tickets. I sent them a text and they said, "Yes, Holden's gone." I'm like, "You guys are crazy. Did you see how he played in the playoffs?" And they thought I was nuts there. I'm like, "You guys, you got to pay attention to him more. He did not really make any mistakes in the playoffs, staying on that bottom pairing."
No, and he was a really good guide for White Cloud. I think White Cloud developed nicely because of where Holden was as the left-hand side. So, White Cloud I could actually see being a middle tier pair at some point because he's going to be so reliable. I mean, the kid, that was his rookie year. He only played for the final probably 15 games of the regular season and then into the playoffs, and he was absolutely outstanding. And the thing that actually destroyed me more than actually losing in the Western Conference final was that he felt it was his fault on that penalty at the end of the Dallas series. So I hope that kid, the ceiling for a stay-at-home defenseman is kind of low when you compare them to somebody like, say, Petro or Theodore, but they have their necessary skill set that we need on this team. And I think we have a lot of depth in our defensive pairings because of that too.
So now you talk about the strengths. Now, what is the weakness? Where is the weakness in the Knights' armor?
Center depth for sure. We traded away Stastny. Stastny is, you saw him on the Blues. He probably wasn't the best on the Blues that he was on, the Avs or on other teams, but
he was okay.
He's Old Faithful. He's always doing his thing. He's not the fastest guy, but he sees that sheet of ice better than most players out there. So he's definitely a hockey IQ guy. I could see him coaching someday. But for sure, that's going to be a little bit of a painful loss because he's got that vision. We think Cody Glass is kind of like a Stastny Light or Stastny Jr., and he could make a very similar career path in the NHL, but he's so young. I mean, he didn't do great last season because of where they put him. So it's like, are you going to put him on the third line again? And is the same thing going to happen? Are they going to move him between Stone and Patches? Is Stevenson really talented enough to do anything except get one under Allen or Binnington? I'm not 100% sold on our center depth. What do you think, Dave?
Yeah, go ahead, Dave.
I was just going to say it all depends on how Glass develops this year. I mean, he had a human anchor on his line, and he's a center, and they moved him to the wing. I felt from day one that was a big mistake. I don't like playing players out of position during their rookie season or the second year. Let them develop at their natural position. Then they become more of a veteran. Then you can move them around to different positions. And I couldn't stand how Gallant did that at the beginning of the year last year. I think it ruined him.
That got him fired too, I think. Part of the reason.
Yeah. And you're talking about Cody Glass and Stevenson. When I was doing the preview article for Vegas, I was looking into the roster, and I'm so used to Vegas having being super deep at center, over the years. And like I looked at the roster and I was like, well, who's the other center besides Carlson? I mean, who's going to center Patches and Stone? And just kind of based on what I've been seeing, what I saw on Twitter for what the lines have been rolling out, looks like Stevenson's going to get the first crack at being in between Pacioretty and Stone. But I kind of sat there thinking, you know what? I wouldn't be surprised if, Glass moves up, at some point, because he's a former first round pick. They've got a lot of time invested in him. And, between him and Stevenson, he's the one with the upside. So I was going to ask you, who do you expect to be the breakout star this year? I assume it's Glass.
I'm going to say Cody Glass.
Yeah, agreed. I mean, it kind of has to be. Everybody else is cemented where they are for the most part. The only other one that I could think of is if had Peyton Krebs ended up in the lineup, he could have been a breakout, because if you saw him in World Juniors, he was fantastic. But since he's still a little young and I think they want another year or two of development, I think it's got to be Glass, if anybody.
Yep. There was a few games at the beginning of last season where Glass was between Pacioretty and Stone, and he played outstanding. Just his vision there, especially on the power play, he found Stone and Pacioretty. The power play started out pretty well last year and then kind of tailed off. Once some of our other players, we had some injuries at the beginning of last year that really threw the lines off. That's why Glass was with those two. And just the potential there just looked great. But I do agree that Stevenson will start out, because even Stevenson, when he first came over from Washington, played very well between Stone and Pacioretty. But then again, lots of players would play. Yeah, I was going to say lots of players would play well between them.
Wags, I think you could play well between Pacioretty and Stone.
I'd be fine with that. I'd be fine playing in between those two guys and playing on an NHL team. So we talked a little about.
Put my 6'5" ass in front of the net and let them do their thing.
That's the way to play.
Give Wags that Evander Kane money, by the way.
His money, not his bankruptcy. So now you guys have officially been labeled the Douche Canoes by Sporty with Cori and Richie. They seem kind of sour that you rated them last in the West. In reality, are they your biggest rivals, or is it still San Jose with all of their issues, or is it someone else?
Yeah, it's tough because it's definitely still San Jose. Like if you look at the sentiment, like if you're seeing like Sharks fans and Vegas fans that aren't part of the Hockey Podcast Network talk with each other, they're always mean to each other, and they're always like ridiculously mean. Like, oh, I hope your mom gets sick, and it's like, wow, guys, like calm down a little bit. Like it's just a game. Come on.
And that's the mild version of it.
Yeah. I was censoring that for the podcast here, but yeah, I mean it's. That rivalry, I don't think could die unless the Sharks go in a downward spiral for at least 3 or 4 seasons straight. Then it will be like the San Jose LA rivalry where it just kind of fizzled out because LA sucks. If they figure their stuff out and they're at least like a wild card contender, then the shit talking will just resume. The rivalry will be strong. And then Arizona is just an afterthought to us. So sorry, Cori and Richie. We don't take them as seriously as we do San Jose because they haven't beat us in a playoff round.
Yeah, and they mostly put us in the Douche Canoe because they said we kept trolling them about it. Like the four of us looked at each other like, when did we do that? We did it once.
That was Connor's trolling them about it the whole time.
Other people doing that. Tom.
And they and trust me, they let you know when they don't like being trolled on. They're very sensitive down in Arizona. They kind of feel like the redheaded stepchild of the NHL, and I can kind of understand that because, well, they are.
Yeah, I remember originally when I started making the graphic for that predictions, and then I saw that the other three, they all put them last. Well, I think I originally had them 5th or 6th. I'm like, you know what? Just for dramatic sake, I'm going to put them last and just let fire go out.
Yeah, we all picked them 4th just because, and I think for me at least, it was just because, we want to be nice to them because they keep shivving our team, every single time on the ice. So, that's going to be, I think, Wags, that's going to be another rivalry that develops, out of this is, the Blues Coyotes, stop, messing with our, Stanley Cup level team, Arizona, you jerks. By the way, speaking of rivalries, it's kind of funny. You mentioned, the Sharks being, still your rival, even though they're kind of, in the doghouse lately. For us, Wags, the Blackhawks have been pretty, craptacular the last couple of years. I would still say the Blackhawks are our main rival, and that's a rivalry I don't see really ever changing just because of the history behind it. But Predators and Stars were pretty close. But I would still say Blackhawks are tops, right, Wags?
At this point, yes. But Nashville especially is really creeping up on that top spot just because their fans are just assholes. They're terrible.
Yeah.
That's really what it comes down to. Is when the fans are bad and the team can beat you, that combination just makes that's a rivalry for me.
Yeah, and for me, I consider Dallas and the Blues like more of a competitive rivalry. The Preds are just pricks, and their fans are pricks. That's just flat out. I actually like Dallas fans. They're cool, but Nashville not so much. Alrighty,
that's how it kind of started out with San Jose and us.
Well, we've taken enough of your time here. Let's go ahead and wrap things up. Where can we find you guys on social media?
So I'm Andrew, aka at Choi VGK on Twitter, and our podcast social media is at Vegas Nightly, that spelt with like night, like KN. And so check us out on Twitter if you don't already hate us from this interview. And thank you.
I'm actually surprised how likable you guys are, actually, because I expected some more Petro shit being thrown our way at us. Honestly,
we're putting it for Twitter so everybody can see it.
Oh, yeah. There we go. There we go.
Listen to our podcast that came out yesterday.
It's bad.
What's it about?
You.
Us being trolled and us trolling other people. The over-unders that we put out, especially the amount of times you said, how many times is Vegas going to remind us that we have Petro? So that counts as one more.
Yeah, we're up to like 6.
Carlo, we got 15 in that podcast. But
sounds perfect. Well, guys, go check that podcast out. It is a weekly, nightly podcast here on the Hockey Podcast Network. One of my favorite podcasts in the network. I've said it before and I say it again. It's one of the handful that I have on my phone, you're ready to listen to. I haven't listened to that episode yet. It's on the list, but definitely check that out. And thanks for being on, guys.
Thanks for having us on. And you can always join us sometime as well later on in the year.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll definitely have to do this again because we're going to be seeing our teams are going to see a lot of each other this year, 8 times.
Oh yeah,
so it's going to be fun. It's going to be fun. Alrighty. Well, we'll go ahead and cover the notes that are blue after we hear from our Hockey Podcast Network brethren, the Caps Chirp Podcast.
So you like hockey? Congratulations. You're amongst the smartest sports fans in the world. Want to fight about it? Join me, the Hockey Troll, and that snack Polly Cupcakes every Monday and Thursday on the official Caps Chirp podcast, repping the greatest team in the NHL, your Washington Capitals.
Not only do we bring you the best Washington Capitals coverage, but we've got the hottest takes and the tastiest content.
Tune in wherever you get your podcast and at thehockeypodcastnetwork.com. Chirp us on all social media platforms at Caps Chirp.
See you beauties and benders there.
And now it's time for our newest segment, Notes That Are Blue, because the name Bluenotes was already taken and we can't infringe on our own gimmick. It would be confusing, so we are calling this Notes That Are Blue. Wags, by the way, you probably, if you're watching this, he has left. He is having some technical difficulties, so we're just going to go ahead and pound through some of these Notes That Are Blue really quickly here, and then we will send you on your merry way. So, first of all, the rags to riches story, that is Mike Hoffman. He signs a 1-year, $4 million deal with the Blues. As a PTO, sometimes you're just hoping to get that veteran minimum contract. And he gets a $4 million deal. Of course, he was going to get that anyways. I'm just really teasing here. By the way, he looked really, really deadly at the blue-white scrimmage on Sunday. You can check that out on the St. Louis Blues YouTube. He got a nice feed from Robert Thomas and just cranked it by Binnington, and it was a beautiful, beautiful sight to behold. Who also looked good at the blue-white scrimmage? Jordan Kyrou. He looked deadly. He scored 2 goals and perhaps firmed up a spot on the third line. Now, he is on the taxi squad for now, at least at the time of this recording, but that's a cap maneuver. He should feature on the third line next to Bozak and presumably Zach Sanford. So I look forward to seeing what Kyrou can do. I'm glad he's finally breaking through, and hopefully he finds a spot in the Craig Berube system that maybe Robbie Fabry wasn't really adept for. We'll see about that. I don't know if Kyrou plays Berube style, but this year will be an interesting experiment for Kyrou. This is going to be his make or break year. He's a guy that I'll be watching all season long and hoping that he pans out, because he could be a really special offensive threat if he does pan out. Now, the Blues are going to LTIR Alex Steen, it appears, according to multiple reports, which is not unexpected. Otherwise, they couldn't play hockey this year with the cap. It appears that they only have to LTIR Steen. They might be able to get away with putting Tarasenko just on the IR, which basically means you get the cap savings for, or the cap cushion rather, for Steen, but not Tarasenko. That there's enough maneuvering going on to where they can avoid putting Tarasenko on the LTIR, which is good because Tarasenko might be able to come back at some point this season. And so you want to make sure there's a spot available for him and make sure there's no cap nightmares when he does come back. So looking forward to seeing Tarasenko back when he is healthy, of course. But in the meantime, it sounds like Doug Armstrong has been able to move enough ducks around to get to where he needs to be for the salary cap this year. So, of course, Vince Dunn signing a cheap $1.8 million deal probably helps out with that just a little bit. All Blues players that were away for the taxi squad this week made it through, including Jake Wallman, who I thought was a risky waiver, but because he looked really good in training camp and the scrimmage, but we could see him back on the roster at some point this year. Who knows? This year might be crazy. Looks like Nico Mikkola and Scott Prunovich will stay around the main roster. Mikkola and Prunovich did not need waivers to go to the taxi squad. It appears Prunovich might be not too far from the top six. He was the fourth pairing in practice on Tuesday, so maybe that's a sign that we see Scotty P in the Blue Note this year. We'll see about that. I thought everything I've read, Mikkola looked really good in training camp. I'm very high on Mikkola. I want to see him get a chance this year. Maybe eventually he takes over the Gunnarsson slot. That's what I'm kind of hoping on a Mikkola this year. I'm very, very high on Mikkola. I don't think he's going to be like a, Victor Hedman or anything like that, but he could carve himself a solid role as a, mid to bottom pairing defenseman on the Blues. I don't see why not, really. I mean, he's a big physical defenseman who is not useless on offense. He actually fired a really nice wrister during practice this week. So we'll see what the future has in store for Mikkola. Sounds like Jake Neighbors could be bound for the AHL, the Blues' first round pick this year, or at least until juniors in Canada get going. Reports are that the Blues will put a coach in Utica, their temporary AHL affiliate this season, because, of course, Springfield is taking the year off due to COVID. So it sounds like that it won't be a bad partnership with the Blues and the Utica Comets. Of course, Utica's main affiliate is the Vancouver Canucks. So, and I think maybe the thinking there, I just now thinking about it, Vancouver, there is a quarantine period that players have to go through if they're going from Canada to the US and back. I'm wondering if Vancouver's not expecting to exactly stock up Utica this year just because of the border issue. Maybe there's some openings for Neighbors or someone else to get the playing time in Utica. We'll see if that actually does pan out. And finally, we mentioned it during the Vegas interview, Evander Kane of the San Jose Sharks. He declares bankruptcy. He's nearly $27 million in debt. He is halfway through a contract that pays him $49 million when it's all said and done. And he's earned a lot more than that before his career. So how do you get paid the multi-millions of dollars that Kane has in his career and you're $27 million in debt and you have to file Chapter 7? How does this happen? How does this possibly happen? Who is advising Evander Kane? This is just one of the most insane, superstar to rag stories that I have heard in professional sports. I mean, I was, reading up and refreshing myself on like Dwight Gooden and Darryl Strawberry from the 1980s. I remember it was Jack Johnson whose family basically bilked him out of most of his NHL earnings, which is why he's, dragging his corpse around to multiple teams just to, make some of his money back. Kane, though, so much money that just gone. It's amazing. It is just absolutely amazing, the story of Evander Kane, and I'm curious. I want to read his biography when this is all said and done, because it's shaping up to be an interesting biography. Even though I don't like Kane as a person, you don't want to see someone go through this. I mean, that's just tragic. Anyway, that is going to do it for this episode of Bluenotes. Wags will be back on Sunday, hopefully with a better connection and a better computer. But in the meantime, I want to thank you for listening and watching, because without you, there's no me, there's no Wags, there is no Luke Widbin, and there is no Hockey Podcast Network. I'm Tom Franklin, reminding you to not be a chump and always play to the whistle.
A reminder that you can follow Bluenotes on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at Bluenotes Pod. I'm the voice of the Blues, Tom Calhoun. Jeremy Boyer, play us out.
You're listening to the Hockey Podcast Network, your home for hockey talk covering every team in the NHL. New episodes every Monday. Download at thehockeypodcastnetwork.com or wherever you get your podcasts from.